And so what we have now is when you go online and you go to those famous people, those internet heroes, the ones that would be considered valued watchmen, and they are in the know and they have intel and they know someone in the White House or they know someone in the CIA and they have connections, basically. They brag about it. Those people, I've glanced at their websites. I've glanced at the news that they have. I've glanced at the stories that they continue to put out. And it's the same stuff. The laptop from Hunter Biden caused this war, or it was the Nazis, or it was NATO that caused this war. And folks, when the war first started, initially, almost 2 months ago, there was a lot of opinions about it, and most of those people were all on the same page. Hunter Biden's was the cause, or the biolabs, or NATO, or the Nazis. That was the reason. And when people went online to try to make sense of it, to understand what this meant and what it was going to do to the world, or how it was going to affect Europe or the United States, World War III, is it the beginning of World War III? A lot of people had questions. A lot of you had questions. So sadly, though, unfortunately, a lot of you ended up at some of those other websites. And you started reading about the evil Jews or the Zionists, or this is scripted, it's a fake war. At first, they weren't even dead. It was crisis actors. They were pretending to be dead. There was no dead bodies. And then it shifted into, well, yeah, but they are kind of corrupt anyway. They're Nazis. And there's a bunch of Nazis there because Lara Logan said it, and Ben-Nun said it, and a bunch of other folks said it. They're Nazis, or Putin is the good guy. God raised up Putin because the ROC, the Russian Orthodox Church, is Christian. So then that became one of the talking points. And there was a lot of opinions. And from the very beginning, when I saw how people were commenting that they didn't really care that Ukrainians were getting killed, and they didn't really care that civilians were getting killed. And when I posted it on Facebook, and I posted the atrocities, and I stated how bad it was, when I talked about Bucha, I revealed about Bucha, the massacre at Bucha, the mass graves, didn't take long. Here they came onto Facebook and argued with me that, well, Zelensky's corrupt, or, well, they're a bunch of Nazis, or, well, for this reason or for that reason, you excused it. And some of you folks are still excusing it, even right now, for those same reasons. However, we have now turned a corner. This war has been almost 2 months, and the initial invasion has shifted. They were coming in from the north and from Belarus. The Russians were trying to get to Kiev, but the Ukrainians had a valiant resistance, and a lot of Russians have died, over 20,000, and now 30 to 40, 50,000 have been injured and maimed. So now we're looking at approximately 50 to 60 to 70,000 Russian soldiers out of the fight. So Putin had to pull back and say, we're going to concentrate on the separatist region of Donbass, which is what they've been doing already for the last 8 years. So now Russia's putting all its forces into the Donbass because they want to have a land bridge from the Donbass. And here's a map right here. If you look at it, there's the Donbass, and then you go toward the west. There's Mariupol in the middle, and they're still holding out in Mariupol. There's several thousand soldiers and also several thousand civilians hidden in bunkers under that steel plant. They're resisting. So now Putin said, well, we're not going to concentrate too much on the steel plant. We're going to starve them out and then keep going to the west to follow the coastline and then make it to Odessa. And Odessa is the last city toward the west. It's a port city. And then you have Moldova and Transnistria and that little sliver of a separatist region between Moldova and Ukraine. Now, in the last few days, one of the Russian foreign ministers stated in an interview that the goal now is going to be to go along the south to Odessa, take it over, and then that'll seal off Ukraine's ability to export anything or import anything. They're one of the top wheat producers of the world. They're not going to be able to export it. And we're going to see the ramifications of that this summer. So Russia has a new plan, but that new plan includes Moldova. That came out today. So Moldova is on the list, and if you folks have been following me for long enough, on the first day of the invasion, the very first day, I stated that Moldova is also going to be one of the goals. Why did I say that? Because of the research that I've done and because of the information that I have come across on the big plan of what Putin is doing. And I want to say this real quick, ladies and gentlemen. When Donald Trump came to the scene and all of those fake prophet nar Christians and the leaders and the false prophets, the Mark Taylors, you know, all those guys, Lance Wallnau, those jokesters, frauds, clouds without water, they promoted Donald Trump. Paula White, they promoted Trump. And a lot of people followed, including some of the watchmen that are out there. And I stated, now it's been 5 or 6 years, I stated, I wanted to challenge you to do something. And it was this, to write down the names of all the people who were telling you that Trump was going to make America great and put their names on a piece of paper and stick it to your refrigerator. I said to do that 5, 6 years ago. You remember that, folks, if you followed me that long? And then I said this, when it turns out that Donald Trump does not make America great, then remember who told you the lies. Remember who gave you the false information. Remember who was towing you behind them with lies. And remember who you were following with their lies. Remember it. Donald Trump left. America was not great. He might come back. He might not. I think he will. If he doesn't, then we'll look elsewhere. But for now, I think he's coming back. But the prophecies about him didn't come true, did they? But all those watchmen who a lot of you really look up to, and you consider them smart and having the sources of intel and intelligence, and they have friends in the White House or the Pentagon or the CIA or all these bogus claims, most of those people, actually all of those people turned out to be wrong about Trump. And once again, most of those same people are towing the line and pimping for Putin, for Vladimir Putin. And they're giving you every reason why he's the good guy. Those same people are doing this. So I want to challenge you with another thing, folks. Once again, write down their names. If you go to their website, you listen to their shows, you like their YouTube channel, and they're telling you about how Hunter Biden is the cause of all this, or the Nazis, or the biolabs that they were going to use to kill everybody. They were making these horrible bioweapons. And that's what you're being told. So you're being distracted with the 3 pillars of lies. The Nazis, that NATO caused this, or the biolabs. Actually, we can add a fourth one, that Putin is a Christian because the Russian Orthodox Church is against the LGBT. And therefore, they are holy because Putin does not like them. And therefore, somehow, because he doesn't like gays, that makes him a holy man. And it makes him righteous. And it makes him doing the right thing. So what we have is something very weird, ladies and gentlemen. Now think about this. If you've been a Christian long enough, I got saved in 1980. And I remember as a young teenage Christian studying end-time prophecy, I never understood and I could not fathom how people in the world would be okay with others who didn't want to take the mark of the beast to have their heads chopped off. I never understood how regular citizens would know that there was an operation in the middle of town and they were chopping heads off people, and the rest of the people in the neighborhood didn't seem to mind. They were fine with it. I could not compute how people would get to the point where there would be mass extermination taking place, a holocaust of a lot of people in the world, of humans, a genocide. I never understood who would go for that. How could people go for something so horrible? But now, fast forward to now, folks. Right now, it's not a secret anymore. Bucha was just the first of many. Bucha revealed to us that genocide is taking place, and that a mass grave was discovered in Bucha. And now we have them in a lot of suburban cities all around Ukraine. They're finding mass graves and they're finding dead people. And now it has come out that outside of Mariupol, there are 300 mass graves with up to 9,000 bodies in them. Also, we have the reports that buses were filled up with people, up to 50,000, and they were bussed eastward into Russia. And we don't know where they ended up, probably at a concentration camp or Siberia, or to be exterminated somewhere. And also, up to 100,000 children have been stolen from Ukraine. Children to be adopted, and they're getting adopted quick. So Putin is stripping the youth from Ukraine, and he's killing the grown-ups. He's killing the adults. And I have talked about this. When Bucha was first announced, I mentioned it on Facebook. I was grieving. I wept. When I saw the pictures, I wept, folks. And in my sadness, I was also astonished and mystified, because when I went to Facebook to share this atrocity, I could not believe that some of you, if you were some of those people, and by the way, I blocked you because I want nothing to do with you now. Some of you actually went in there and justified or made excuses, or you misdirected, or you just wanted to change the subject and blame either Zelensky or Ukraine or the people were Nazis. But the core of the crime that was taking place was dismissed. And ladies and gentlemen, when I was as a young Christian, I could not believe that the time would come when people wouldn't care that others were being butchered. But now here we are, and we are seeing that there are people who claim to be Christians who are justifying or dismissing or ignoring or doing a whataboutism. The issue is not those things right now. The issue now is Ukraine, that's a European country, and that war is going to turn into World War III, and millions of people, if this thing continues the way it's going, are going to die. And it's going to affect you. It's going to affect every one of you that are watching me right now. It is going to affect you. It's going to affect your job, your bank account. It's going to affect your lifestyle. It's going to affect the lives of your kids. It's going to affect you. But not just from an economic, social, governmental, political point of view, not just because of that. It is also going to affect every one of you and me, every one of us, because God's watching. God is watching the heart of the church right now. And the thing that astonishes me, folks, is the question that I have. And it is this: what happened to the heart of the church? What happened to it? Where did it go? Now, some of you have not seen what I'm talking about as far as what's happening in Ukraine. It is a nightmare. I don't understand how the church doesn't care. A good portion of the church would rather complain about a laptop or a biolab, or that it's NATO's fault, or that it's Nazis, instead of looking at what's really happening and trying to find out the real truth. Now, some of you who are still making excuses for that, the reason you're doing that is because you've been influenced by lies, because you've gone to those other websites or those YouTube channels and you've listened to the same shows over and over and over. Or you've gone to Fox News and you've listened to Tucker Carlson, who loves Putin, and he doesn't care about Ukraine. He even said it. Listen to this, folks.
Why do I care what's going on in the conflict between Ukraine and Russia? And I'm serious. Like, why do I care?
Tell you why.
And why shouldn't I root for Russia, which I am?
I don't know how to follow up on that. Why should I care? And what? Fox News is supposed to be the magnet for Christians who are supposed to believe in what the Bible says. And by the way, the Bible constantly, over and over, throughout the Old Testament and the New, constantly reminds God's people. In the Old Testament, it was Israel, and now in the New Testament. But one of the chief condemnations and indictments that God had against his people was that they did not respect justice. They did not look for justice. They looked the other way from justice. In fact, in Isaiah chapter 1, verse 17, it says, I have my Bible right here. It says, learn to do good, seek justice, rebuke the oppressor, defend the fatherless, plead for the widow. This is God talking right here. Rebuke the oppressor. In this case, it's Vladimir Putin, and it's the Russian soldiers. The Russian soldiers are oppressing Ukraine, and they're causing fatherless children to happen every day by the hundreds. And they're causing widows to happen every day by the hundreds. But instead of having a heart for them and weeping for them and crying for justice and saying that this is not right, what Putin is doing, it's oppression, it's evil, it is not just. It's not just to go into a city and bomb every house, ladies and gentlemen. That is not just. It is not just to bomb hospitals and schools. And now we have too much evidence that that's what's going on. The tanks have gone into cities throughout, and they are just destroying the infrastructure. They're destroying houses and churches and hospitals and theaters with people in them. They're shooting at cars with people in them. The tanks are running over people. And the Russian soldiers are killing all the men that they find. And they're raping the women. They have been looting. They have been stealing furniture and washing machines and computers, earbuds, and they're taking them. In fact, when they fled to the north and retreated, they took a lot of stuff with them, and then they went into Belarus. And now we have the evidence that they went into some of those mailbox stores and shipped their washing machines and the stuff they looted. We have intercepted phone calls of Russians saying that they stole from some of the people they killed, and they're sending it home to their wives or girlfriends. So we have a massacre going on. We have genocide going on. We have a Holocaust going on. And a segment of you guys visiting, you don't care. You don't care that injustice is taking place. You don't care that crimes against humanity are taking place. But we have too much evidence now. Now, when Bucha was discovered, I made a post on Facebook and I said that we now know that the excuse of biolabs and Nazis and NATO can no longer be used as the excuse. We can't claim that one anymore. Why? Because when they went into Bucha, they'd massacred regular people that had nothing to do with biolabs. They massacred people, men, women, and children, tied their hands behind their backs, killed them, ran over them with tanks, burned their bodies. So these people were not involved in biolabs, but they were still genocided. They were not part of NATO, but they were still murdered. If I were to ask you face to face, what do you think about the butchering taking place to the civilians? What would your answer be? Would you make an excuse? What is happening in Ukraine? We haven't seen this kind of thing since Hitler. Vladimir Putin is the new Hitler of the 21st century. He's proving it. He does not care about the Ukrainians. Now, if some of you are having a hard time with what I'm saying, I'm telling you the truth, folks. Write down my name and stick it on your fridge. Go ahead and say Nathan says it's a genocide. Nathan says he claims that Putin's doing all these crimes against humanity, against the Geneva, all this, etc., etc. Go ahead and put my name down, and I stand by it. I'm not afraid of that. And you watch. Watch what Putin's going to do next. Because if he goes into Moldova or Transnistria, the separatist region between Ukraine and Moldova, see it right here on the map? If he goes into there, folks, then it wasn't about the biolabs, was it? If he invades another country, what's going to be the excuse then? Folks, that's where we're headed. Now, the Russian media has made announcements. They are telling their people.
Если вы считаете, что мы остановимся на Украине, подумайте 300 раз. Напомню вам, что Украина – это всего лишь промежуточный этап в обеспечении стратегической безопасности Российской Федерации.
У нас кончится терпение, мы просто запустим что-нибудь тяжелое в сторону Вашингтона и Лондона.
Польша доиграется. Было 3 раздела Польши. 4-й будет последний.
Граница России нигде не заканчивается.
Придет время, и Польше ничего не останется. И от Прибалтики.
Мне кажется, что государства под названием Литва и государства под названием Польша ведут себя слишком нагло. Слишком нагло. И не понимают еще, так сказать, да, что вот на самом деле с ними можно разобраться быстрее, чем с Украиной.
Пускай пищат, кричат, да, это бомбардировщики, которые способны нести ядерное оружие, но у нас нет другого выхода.
Наши подлодки способны выпустить более 500 ядерных боеголовок, что гарантированно уничтожают США и все страны НАТО в придачу. Это по принципу «зачем нам мир, если в нем не будет России?». И сейчас вся российская триада переведена в особый режим боевого дежурства.
Если мы снова нашу армию подведем к западным границам, они трусливые, они боятся, их нужно брать испугом, кнутом.
Мы ни в коем случае не можем остановиться на полпути.
С такими санкциями, кто сказал, что надо останавливаться вообще в границах Украины?
Например, может выглядеть...
Their state-run newspaper did an article, what to do about the Ukraine problem. What do we do about them? And the article stated that Ukrainians need to be erased from the map. And Ukraine as a country needs to be erased from the map. In other words, the ethnic group of Ukrainians should not live anymore. They cannot stay on the earth. They have to be dealt with and they have to be exterminated. If some of them can be re-educated, then they'll try that. Otherwise, they're going to kill all of them. And that is what Russia is saying to their people. In fact, their news reporters are saying the same thing. That they have to do something about the Ukrainians. In fact, look at this, folks.
Что, кстати, говорит по этому поводу Виктория Нуланд. Она когда говорит, что, мол, Владимир Путин устраивает, так она конкретно говорит, видно же, в чем цель Путина. Стереть идею быть украинцем. Так я с Викой Нуланд согласен. Вика, ты гений. Эту идею надо стереть от начала до конца. Она 100 лет отравляет жизнь народам славянским. Потому что на самом деле русских людей, да, мы сказали, ты теперь будешь, несмотря на то, что это абсолютно обидное название даже. Это обидное название. Быть одним из русских народов и вдруг оказаться украинцами. Подождите, еще раз, речь идет об украинстве.
Ну хорошо. Да.
Вот об идее украинства.
Понятно.
Понимаете, об идее того, что вот, так сказать, знаете, что некий, так сказать, еще один из русских народов, им сказали, что вы не русские, вы должны русских ненавидеть и воевать с ними. Вот эту идею надо вытравить полностью. И работа эта вестись будет очень долго. Сколько мы из них это все дело будем вытравливать? Но прежде чем начать их вытравливать, и прежде чем они начнут осознавать, что нужно обучаться и нужно видеть другую жизнь, их сначала надо убедительно победить.
Now, is that fake news? Who do we blame that on? Do we blame it on the biolabs? Do we blame it on who, folks? Zelensky, because he was a comedian, an actor? Do we blame it on him? What Russia just said, that they should kill all of them? Ladies and gentlemen, what we're watching right now is a return to old-fashioned war, a slaughter of medieval times. How many of you thought that the days of scorched earth warfare were behind us? You know, that was 100 years ago stuff. That was 20th century stuff. That was World War II stuff, but we don't do that anymore. We don't just burn every village and kill everybody and keep going. They are destroying everything. They have told the Russian soldiers to destroy everybody, to kill everybody. No survivors. Why? Why are they saying this? Why? It's because Putin wants to exterminate Ukraine as a people. And he has been writing about this for years. In 2007, he wrote about Russkiy Mir, which means Russian world. It's a doctrine that those who speak Russian, whether they're ethnically Russian or not, but they're a part of the Slavic family, if they speak Russian, they need to belong to a restored Russia. So Putin has been talking about how Russia needs to be restored, and every country, meaning some of the ex-satellite nations, some of the ex-Warsaw Pact nations, you know, the breakaways that joined NATO, Putin has said in his paper about the Russian world that the Russian-speaking ethnic groups need to realign with Russia. In other words, Russia needs to grow back to its former glory. There's a paper about it, folks. Russian World, or Russkiy Mir, M-I-R. Look it up. Now, the nonsense about the Russian Orthodox Church being Christian. See this guy right here? Patriarch Kirill. By the way, that's not his real name. That name, Kirill, was given to him by his predecessor, the previous guy, who named him after a patron saint. His real name is Vladimir or something, and there it is on the screen. And this individual right here is ex-KGB, just like his predecessor was. And Kirill, this guy right here, believes in the symphony of the church and the state working together. And he says that the kings and the priests should run everything. The church and the state should make all the rules. That's the guy that some of you are saying is a Christian and is getting rid of all the evil. This guy went to Cuba a few years ago, and he awarded Fidel Castro with his brother Raul an award. And he said that Cuba and Castro are good friends of the church. Look at this right here, folks. Look at these pictures. He hung out with Castro, and he said Castro's a good guy. So this same man that the Fox News people are pimping for, Patriarch Kirill, some of you are justifying what's going on because you said he's a good guy. Also, ladies and gentlemen, Kirill has stated that those people who did not receive the sauce have some confessing to do with God, and they're going to have to live with the guilt of not doing it, and Jesus is not happy with them because they have guilt. Now they're going to have to go to confession and deal with it because they didn't take it. So this is the guy that some of you are defending and using as the mouthpiece or the evidence that Putin's a Christian. It's this guy right here, this flaky guy. He is a multimillionaire. He has been given millions and millions of dollars by Putin. He's given fancy cars, and he has several palaces, several apartments in Russia as well as in other places. He blessed this invasion, this slaughter, this massacre, and he said that it is a holy thing. It's a sacred mission that even is in the metaphysical, is how he put it. Ladies and gentlemen, this thing is messed up. How the church, internet Christians, are picking Satan, picking the feet of the bear. They're choosing to align themselves with the beast. Now, I did an article recently, and I called it, "The Color of Truth is Red." Some of you read it, and in that article, it stated that if you really want the truth, look at the color of the ground, the dirt in Ukraine. It's red from the genocide, from the massacres. That's the truth right there, folks. And we also have the color red is the red dragon in Revelation 13 that gives authority to the beast. The beast, ladies and gentlemen, the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns. It says it's a scarlet beast. Why is that? Because it is caked with blood. That means the feet of the bear are caked with blood. The blood has dried on it. Its paws are walking all over the earth. The bear, Russia, is walking throughout the earth. In the book of Daniel, he is told, "Arise and eat much flesh." You know what that means, folks? It means go out and massacre and maim and genocide. Do ethnic cleansing. Do what Hitler did. That's what Putin's doing right now because he's fulfilling prophecy. Folks, please make note of that. If you want to be a student of the Word, you can't pick and choose. And you can't allow your politics to override the Bible. The thing that's happening right now in the internet church amongst the supposed watchmen is there's a new denomination that has risen, that is formed on the internet. It's the denomination of conspiracy theory, which includes also hating anything that has to do with Democrats. And everything that's wrong in the world is because of the Democrats. It's Biden's fault, and whoever the president happens to be, it's their fault. So if you are part of this denomination, you have to hate anything blue. It's all their fault. And you have to watch Fox News and listen to Tucker Carlson lie to you. And actually, in truth, folks, Tucker Carlson is a fifth column media whore. For those of you that don't know what fifth column is, that comes from World War I. The fifth column was the column of the media of propaganda that would go in first and soften the target, soften the people. It would soften the opinion and get them not to be as afraid, to tell them that we're going to go in there, we're going to invade you, but we're doing it for your own good. So leaflets would be dropped, were usually dropped in a country that was going to be invaded. America did it. They dropped leaflets in Germany, and Hitler did the same thing. He dropped leaflets in France and in other places. When the Civil War in Spain occurred, General Francisco, he used the fifth column to try to soften the target as well. And before Hitler went to war with the United States, there was a fifth column operation happening in the United States as well that was trying to soften the opinion, the political opinions against Germany. And it was so effective, in fact, before we entered the war, ladies and gentlemen, that 40 factories were sabotaged here in America by people who were sympathizing with what Hitler had to say with his fifth column deception, lies. Hitler did it, and it worked in America. And now here we go again. Make note, folks. Putin is using fifth column deception, and we have journalists who have taken that ball and ran with it. Tucker Carlson is one of them. He's a Putin fifth column whore, pimp. Also, Laura Logan is one of them. She's one of them as well. Steve Bannon, Israeli News Live, he's doing it as well. Softening the target to convince you that Putin's the good guy, when in actuality, he's the feet of the beast. Now, folks, look at the insanity taking place right now. The red horse is riding, but this thing is going to escalate, and it's going to become a nightmare before all of our eyes. And the thing that all of us need to make sure that we're doing, folks, is we have to be on the correct side of spiritual history, of end-time history, of eschatology, of the will of God. Unfortunately, a number of internet Christians are choosing the beast. And folks, think about this. If I am correct that Russia is the feet of the bear, and I don't see any way that it can't be, Russia's known as the bear. The Bible tells us about the bear. And if I'm correct about this, and Russia is the feet of the bear, but at the same time, there are people in America, in the Republican Party, on Fox News, that go to church. There are people who call themselves watchmen, people who say that they know the Bible, people who say they love Jesus, who are telling you that Putin is the good guy, and he's just trying to help humanity, and they're trying to get you to see their side, to agree with them that Putin is the good guy. Then, ladies and gentlemen, by default, is that not getting people to worship the beast? Isn't it getting people to side themselves with the beast? If you side yourself with Russia and Putin, you're siding yourself with the beast, folks. And by doing that, that's putting loyalty toward the beast, which is the same as supporting the beast. And let's take it further. If you support it, and you defend it, and you sympathize for it, and you apologize for it, and you try to explain it and spin it and say that it's good, then isn't that also worshiping the beast, ladies and gentlemen? Does that not fulfill what we read in Revelation, that they worshipped the beast? Folks, think about it. To get people to sympathize with Putin, but thereby they're worshiping the beast. They're accepting the beast. And folks, let me take it even further. If Satan, the red dragon, gives power and authority to this scarlet, blood-covered, blood-matted hair beast, if Satan is behind it, and if people give their allegiance to it, you know the thing about open doors? You know the spiritual laws about open doors, ladies and gentlemen? About legalities when it comes to resisting Satan? You know the legalities about resting on the Word and on the blood of Jesus? Choosing the blood of Jesus and choosing the Word? When people are demonized and they get infected with demonic influence or oppression or even depression or possession, when people get to that point, there's open doors that allow that. And most of you know about this. Open doors, having certain sins in their lives, will open the door for the demons to come right in. Folks, think about this. What if, since Satan is powering this scarlet-covered beast, which includes Putin, when people give their loyalty to Putin or apologize for him, what if that's opening a door, and thereby then the great delusion, because they don't want the truth that 2 Thessalonians 2 tells us about, the great delusion then has an open door to go into their hearts. And after that happens, the ability to discern and to judge and to reject lies goes away, because scales are placed over their eyes. And we read about that in 2 Thessalonians 2. It says, because they had no love for the truth, therefore God would send a strong delusion. So, to deny truth, in one hand, results in a delusion. And right now, ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot of lies about this war. And the things that it was blamed on initially, we can now say that they have nothing to do with it, because now we see that the targets are not biolabs or NATO government officials or the Nazis. And since the ROC, the Russian Orthodox Church, approved the butchering of people, these things fall into the camp of Satanism. They fall into the camp of demonic evil, of murder, bloodshed. And ladies and gentlemen, to side with Putin and justify it I'm going to go out on the limb and say this. If any of us, as we're navigating into much darker territory during this time, these end times, there's a lot of demons that have been loosed. More spirits have been loosed, ladies and gentlemen. And those spirits are fluttering about, and they have brought darkness over this world. And a lot of people don't know what to make of it, but they find themselves confused. They find themselves struggling with talking to God or hearing from God. Why? Because it's dark. There's a cloud of darkness and deception and delusion. Jesus said, don't be deceived. So if people are deceived, then it's much harder to understand the truth. It is much harder to know the truth. It's much harder to see the light when the scales fall over their eyes. So right now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to appeal to you with this. If you are at the place that is still justifying Putin, I want to challenge you with, first of all, stop going to those websites that have told you the reasons you're following Putin. Take a break from it. Don't go to those YouTube channels that continue to lie to you. Folks, we have to use our heads. We have to try our best to be vigilant, to not let the religion of conspiracy take over our common sense, our rationale, and our God-given discernment. Now, some of you do not know how to research. You don't know how to do it. Then you have to learn how to do it. You have to put into practice measures so that you are making sure that what you're sharing is not a lie. And there are a lot of ways to do that. Some of you are saying, when I would post on Facebook about what the war was doing, I immediately got an answer, well, I wouldn't trust in mainstream media, Nathan. Well, let me ask you a question. What part of mainstream media is you have a problem with? Because the Hunter Biden information was mainstream media. So which part is evil there? What part? Ladies and gentlemen, it is not mainstream media that's the problem. It is when the camera crew is there and they're filming, if a house is on fire and they're filming it, there's a car wreck and they're filming it and they report on it, it's the reporter, the commentary of the reporter. It's his ideology that gets mixed into the report. But the actual frames of reference, the pictures and the video that we get from the reports, that's just video and reporting. So mainstream media does serve a purpose when it reports on the car wreck or the house on fire, the drunk driver killed somebody. You know, when Donald Trump had his rallies, most of you folks wanted the mainstream media there, and he would whine about it all the time. They're not here reporting. And then when they showed up, he would point to them, you guys are fake news. That whole concept of fake news, by the way, has been added to the doctrine of the internet church, the internet church of conspiracy. So you have conspiracy theory, and then all news now is fake. So that means nothing at all that gets reported is real. And by doing that, folks, what Donald Trump did was a brilliant plan of evil. And what he did was he took away the free press. He took away what we are given in our Constitution, freedom of the press. Because there are journalists who are out there reporting. NBC News has, and Fox News and most of the big news, ABC has embedded journalists in Ukraine, and there have been already a number of them. I believe it's already over 10, we're approaching 20 journalists that have died trying to film footage to report to America, to the world. So those guys are not doing fake news. Yeah, they're mainstream media, and they're reporting the tanks and the bombs and the explosions and the warfare, basically, the artillery shells exploding. And then the mayhem and the aftermath, the exploded buildings, the burned out buildings, the shells of ruins. They're reporting on all of that. And because they report it and it gets put on YouTube, and if I share, look what happened, and then some of you say, well, that's mainstream news. Why do you trust in that? Well, I'm not trusting in it, but I'm using it as a reference point. If I have been able to confirm the story, not just from them, but I'm using it as a reference point to give us something to look at because it's been confirmed and vetted. And so getting back to my question, if you don't know how to research, number one, don't throw everything out, folks, because if you throw everything out and say all mainstream news is a lie, and then you go to the Church of Conspiracy from your favorite internet hero, and you listen to their lies, then you're in a mix of deception already, folks. You're already mired in the deception, and you're going to fall for it. Because a lot of you are already believing what I covered earlier, a moment ago. So there are other ways to find out if something is true. Number one, when you see an image, it's easy to take that image and do a reverse search, image search, and you can use Google Images for that. You go to Google Images, see the little camera? Look, here's a picture right here. This camera, you click on the camera, and it says put in the URL, the web address, the link of the photograph. It'll give you the choice, or you can upload it if it's on your phone or your computer. And then it'll tell you where that image has been found also. And you can do that with any image. So when some of you are sharing images of the Nazis, look at these soldiers, they're Nazis. If you would have done image searches on them, because I've seen this happen already, it brings up that those images are almost 10 years old. They're from 2014. Some of you are sharing that it's happening right now. But that's one way to vet. Also, there's a website called tineye.com. It does the same thing. You can do a reverse image search. Another thing you can do is download the Reddit app. Reddit, download it, put it on your phone, and when you open it up, in the search bar, just type in whatever word you're looking for. Type in Ukraine, type in Russia, type in, if you're curious, type in dead Russians, and you'll see the dead Russians. Type in Bucha, B-U-C-H-A, and these are not from mainstream media. You will get reports from people who took pictures and just stuck it on Reddit, citizens, civilians who live in Ukraine, soldiers who are fighting, Ukrainian soldiers will take pictures and put them up there on Reddit. So you can find actual source stories from the source itself. And using this method, you can also go to Telegram. Get the app there, but most of it is done in the posts from Telegram are in the native language, so a lot of the Ukrainian posts are in Ukraine, but you can copy the words and then go to Google Translate to find out. So there's other methods, ladies and gentlemen. You can also use Twitter. Get the Twitter app and type in any word, and it'll bring up stories from civilians, massacres, genocide. It shows the graves. It shows the dead bodies. You can go there yourself and see it for yourself. When you hear a story from the fifth column, I want to challenge you folks. Check it out. Because the truth is not what you're being told. And the motivation of what Putin is doing is what I said a moment ago. He wants to return Russia to its former glory. And one of the main reasons that Putin feels that he has no other choice than to do this has to do with demography, which is a combination of demographics and geography of Russia. It's about numbers. It's about the population. And when we look at the population of Russian citizens and we break them down into different age groups, the young of Russia, the young people of Russia, the children, the high schoolers, the teenagers, the ones in their 20s, the ones that are draftable, the ones that can be conscripts and go to war, the number of 20-somethings that can go to war is way, way smaller, much smaller than the people in their 40s or 50s or 60s. In other words, the demography of Russia is showing that in the next 5 to 10 years, Russia will not have enough able-bodied young people to fight in their wars. They don't have enough soldiers. Their population is not big enough. They don't have it. So because of that, Russia needs more people. Russia needs more children. Russia needs more young people. And the fastest way for Russia to do this is to get them from other countries. That's why they are stealing children from Ukraine and sending them to adoption agencies, because they want them to be the future of Russia. Russia is going to go in all throughout Ukraine and steal as many children as they can. And the reason Russia is doing this right now is because in the next 2 to 3 years, they would not have been able to do it. They wouldn't have had enough. So they're running out of people. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, please hear these words. When the Soviet Union existed, they had the Warsaw countries, the satellites. They had the Baltic states, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia up in the north, next to Finland and Sweden. They had Poland. They had Moldova. They had Romania. And then Hungary and the smaller countries below, Serbia or Yugoslavia at the time. Russia wants to restore the former borders so that they can have the population that they need for a future of Russia. Therefore, Putin needs to invade those countries. And that is the plan, ladies and gentlemen. He needs to do it if he is to survive as a country. That's what he thinks. Also, if you look at the map of Russia and you look at history of Russia, Russia has been invaded about 50 times over the last few hundred years. And those invasions always came through the same gateways. They came through Moldova. They came from Poland. They came from the north up by Estonia. They came from Kazakhstan. They came through Georgia. They came through Chechnya. He's concerned about Europe, and he's paranoid. When the Soviet Union existed, the Soviet Union had gates in those areas. In those gates, right now, if we were to look at a map, there's one in Poland, in Polish territory, between Warsaw and then going toward East Poland, toward Lviv. That's how Hitler went through. And then there's another gate by Estonia. And like I said, Georgia is one, as well as Chechnya. Now, he shut the one in Chechnya. He has control of that. Georgia is going to be next. At some point, he's going to close the gate in Georgia. So Russia's going to take over Georgia. Moldova, there's a gate there. And it touches Romania. There's an area where they came in through between the Carpathian Mountains. So he has to reclaim that land as well. That's what's going on right now, ladies and gentlemen. And if you see a map and you look at history and you look at the writings that Putin has been talking about, Russkiy Mir, or Russian world, he has made a narrative that describes that Russian-speaking countries need to merge back with Russia. And the Russian-speaking countries that still exist, aside from Ukraine, include Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. In fact, there's a good percentage of Russian speakers up there in the Baltic region. And Estonia right now just wants none of it. They are arming Ukraine. They don't trust Putin because they know what he's done. They lived through the Soviet Empire. They lived through it. So they don't trust him. That's why they are very concerned, because they said he's not going to stop. And Zelensky has been saying this. Zelensky has said, right now we're defending Europe because he's not going to stop at Ukraine. He's going to keep going. And it'll give him another 100 million Russians, so that then he can tap into the pool of conscripts and soldiers. That's why he's doing this, ladies and gentlemen. Now, Finland and Sweden have never been a part of NATO. Finland was neutral during the Soviet Union years. When Stalin first took over, Finland was attacked by Stalin, and they put up a good fight because they have an 800-mile border with Russia. But they gave such a good resistance during the winter. The Finns know how to fight in the winter. They were on skis, and they had snipers, and they caused the Soviets to retreat. So Stalin made an arrangement with Finland saying that as long as you are neutral, then you will act as a buffer, and then no one's going to invade us going through you. So stay neutral. So they did, and they never joined NATO. But now, because of what Putin is doing in Ukraine, Finland is going to join NATO in the coming weeks. Sweden is also going to do it. In fact, one of the arguments that some of you guys are sharing, that NATO was just spreading itself, and the narrative, the way that that's been explained, is like NATO is some sort of plague infection, like the blob, just oozing over the ground and getting closer and closer to all the other countries and swallowing this one and swallowing that. That is not how NATO works, ladies and gentlemen. NATO is a defensive alliance, and when NATO gets bigger from another country, it is not because NATO swallowed them. It is the opposite reason. It's because the country, the former Warsaw country, asks if they can join. It's them that requests it. The countries are asking. Poland asked NATO, can we join? The Baltic states asked. Estonia asked. And now Finland is asking, because they don't trust Russia. In fact, one of the parliament members of Finland put out a video where he said this very thing. In fact, watch this, folks.
Hello from the Parliament of Finland.
Here we yesterday started a process that most likely will lead to Finland applying for NATO membership, and most likely along with Sweden. If that happens, then Putin has truly achieved something remarkable. He hasn't only destroyed the Russian economy, unified the EU, but also caused NATO expansion and two traditionally neutral countries choosing to join NATO. Some months ago, I was among few parliamentarians who supported an NATO application. Today we are a clear majority, and that has happened through Putin's influence. So thanks for that, but please get out of Ukraine.
The reason Finland wants to join is because of Russia. It has nothing to do with NATO extending their reach. It's Finland asking. For the first time in history, they're asking to join NATO, and they're going to bring Sweden along. And then he said this. Watch this, folks.
The Russian narrative is that NATO expands eastwards. That's not entirely true. New members join NATO because they feel threatened. They choose to join NATO for a good reason. Since 2008, Russia has attacked several of its neighboring countries, several countries that are not members of NATO. It has attacked Georgia, it has occupied parts of Moldova, it has annexed Crimea, and now it's waging a full-fledged war in Ukraine. Putin's actions leads to the support for NATO going up. Also here in Finland, where I live, where I'm a member of parliament. Russia says that Russia is surrounded by NATO. That's not true. Only 6% of Russia's land borders are towards a NATO country. Now, if Russia conquers Ukraine, actually that number will double. And the Russian aggression has led to Sweden and Finland changing their views on NATO. If Finland joins NATO, Putin's war with Ukraine will lead to Russia's NATO borders being 3 times as long as they were. So this is an immensely stupid policy if you are concerned about NATO. And actually you shouldn't. NATO is not an offensive force. NATO is a defensive force, and it is there for a reason. The reason why NATO exists, why it draws new members, is situations as the one we are now witnessing in Ukraine.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, based on what you just heard, the accusation that NATO is the one behind all of this, it's their fault, and Putin is justified in not liking it, folks, we're seeing what Putin's true heart was. And a few programs ago, I talked about it. I said Putin is like the abusive, bullying, wife-beater husband, and the ex-wife flees and goes to the shelter and asks the shelter to protect her, and then the husband starts whining about it and saying, no, that's no fair, shelter, you shouldn't exist. And some of you wrote me and you said, Nathan, that's not a good excuse. That's not a good explanation. Yeah, it is. That's what it is, folks. They're afraid of being annihilated. They're afraid of being mistreated. And now that Finland is seeing genocide take place in Ukraine.
We are 3 weeks into a crazy war in the middle of Europe. In Ukraine, thousands of civilians have died, thousands of Ukrainian soldiers have died, probably 10,000 Russian soldiers have died, and 2 to 3 times more wounded. Civilian structures are being hit deliberately, cluster munitions are being used, war crimes are being committed. But even so, nobody knows how the military part will end, but it seems increasingly difficult for Russia to gain anything that even resembles a victory. In Russia, however, the losers are the Russian people. Russia will probably default on its debt. Most foreign companies have left Russia. Hundreds of thousands of people are being unemployed because of this. The value of the ruble has plummeted, the rates are going through the roof. Life gets increasingly expensive, the shelves in the stores are being emptied. Russia is rapidly becoming the North Korea of old. It's clear that at least one generation will lose its future because of Putin's crazy war. If you thought that 1984 was slightly over the top, think again. Words are being prohibited. You can get apprehended for showing a blank sign. You get apprehended for showing a sign with texts from the Bible. Children are being apprehended. Survivors of the Leningrad siege are being apprehended. Free media is leaving the country. There is only one truth, and that is not the truth. If the Russian people thought that they were fighting Nazism in Ukraine, think again. Look at what's happening around you. This is what fascism looks like. Russia is unfortunately increasingly becoming a fascist state. So, if you are listening to this, make your voice heard, even if it might be dangerous, and it might be. Stop this crazy war.
Folks, we need to get the word out on what the truth is. And the truth right now is we're seeing a Holocaust. As you can see, what I'm sharing is not popular. This isn't popular. But I bring you the truth, folks. Because my mandate comes from God. It doesn't come from numbers. It doesn't come from trying to make everyone happy. It doesn't come from wanting to have the biggest program and the most listeners because I lie to you and I sensationalize falsehoods. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to give you the truth, folks, even if it hurts. But the truth is what will save our soul. That's what saves our soul. So if you appreciate what I'm doing, ladies and gentlemen, the address is watchmanscry, P.O. Box 157, Priest River, Idaho, 83856. Or you can go to the website. There it is right there. I'll also have a link below, watchmanscry.com, and there's a place to donate there to support us so I can keep bringing you this information. All right, ladies and gentlemen, well, with that, stay vigilant, stay safe, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.